Covering Huntsville, Decatur, Florence. You're watching WCDX News at 5:30.
The trial for Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer charged with murdering George Floyd, is heading to closing arguments on Monday. Now we're seeing a lot of conversation about one of the witnesses called by Chauvin's lawyer with claims that he's named in a lawsuit about another death after a police encounter. Here's our national verifying investigator, Gabe Cohen.
Claims are popping up on Twitter about a forensic pathologist called by the defense in Derek Chauvin's trial. They say he's currently facing a federal lawsuit related to a similar death at the hands of police. So let's verify. Is a witness for Chauvin's defense named in a federal wrongful death lawsuit? Our sources, court footage, a Maryland state's attorney, and federal court documents.
I do. Can I have a seat, please?
Dr. David Fowler took the stand Wednesday, called by Chauvin's lawyer to give his opinion on George Floyd's cause of death. While several of the state's medical experts cited lack of oxygen, Dr. Fowler blamed Floyd's death on heart disease, drugs, and even carbon monoxide from the squad car.
All of those combined to cause Mr. Floyd's death.
Court records show Dr. Fowler is named in a federal lawsuit filed in December over an incident that is notably similar to Floyd's death. In 2018, 19-year-old Anton Black died after a struggle with police in Greensboro, Maryland. The lawsuit claims officers forced Black to the ground, pinning his slight frame beneath the collective weight of their bodies. Even after Anton was handcuffed, the officers ignored the danger they were causing and kept Anton in a prone restraint for approximately 6 minutes as he struggled to breathe, lost consciousness, and suffered cardiac arrest. At the time, Dr. Fowler was the chief medical examiner for the state of Maryland. He's one of 14 defendants named in the lawsuit filed by Black's family and the ACLU. Fowler and 2 other medical examiners who were involved in Black's autopsy are accused of intentionally concealing police responsibility by falsely attributing the cause of death to a heart condition, bipolar disorder, and natural causes, thereby blaming the victim for his own death and obscuring official responsibility. The lawsuit says Fowler and the other medical examiners ignored the impact of the officer's restraint on Black's ability to breathe and the potential for positional asphyxia, topics that have also come up in Chauvin's trial for the death of George Floyd. A 2019 press release from a Maryland state's attorney confirms that no charges were filed against the officers and that the autopsy was a major factor, writing, "The Emmys report makes perfectly clear that there's no evidence that Anton Black was choked or that he was physically struck by officers or had force applied to his neck." Fowler is now accused of violating well-established principles of forensic pathology. Court records show in early April, Maryland's Attorney General filed a motion to remove the state and its medical examiners, including Dr. Fowler, from the lawsuit. Black's family now has until May 4th to respond. So we can verify, yes, Dr. Fowler, a witness for Chauvin's defense, is named in a federal wrongful death lawsuit. With your Verify, I'm Gabe Cohen.